What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Alto again, and this time we are here with Adam Warren of the almighty Oceano. It is so great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming on the show today, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. You've been a requested guest on the show for a very long time, so it's great to finally make this happen. With this new...
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, just a lot of fans of Oceano follow the show, so it's great to be able to have you on. With your new single that's out, mass-produced, is this maybe like a good representation of what sort of like the follow-up to Revelation is going to sound like, or is this just one little taste of what is to come?
It was originally like before there was really even music finalized. That was kind of where we were headed with, and this is like years ago, like kind of like maybe a year after Revelation was released. That's where we were gonna go with, and just a lot of things changed. There's lockdown, and we took a break, and it in the end, it now is. I think it's a evolution of the band into. I don't want to say a new direction because that might sound a little too discouraging. It's not like a new direction. I think it's just an evolution. I think for as long as it took for this album to come out and how much of a gap there was, I think that when people hear it, they're gonna be like, okay, they've evolved, they've grown up. I think we're finally dialing in what will become this is like the precursor to Oceano in adulthood, if I could say that.
I love that term, Oceano in adulthood. That's a fantastic title. But I've noticed that throughout your whole catalog, when you compare depths to Contagion and so on and so forth, there always has been sort of like an evolution that's sort of demonstrated in a way. Does an album ever start off with like a vision in a way of what you want it to sound like, or is it a very experimental and very improvisational songwriting process?
For the instrumentation, I think there's always a little bit of intention there on the direction, especially if we're counting this one as like the last three albums. We count, the new one and the past two. I think Scott has always had a general idea of where he's wanted to take it with the writing process. Always a little bit of like tweaking, and on my side, I think that's the most where I'm a little bit more loose and improvisational, but especially on this album, there's always kind of been this overarching approach to a theme. Maybe it's not a linear theme, but just something like a motif, to kind of set the tone for me lyrically. And this one is the first one where it's not overly personal, but it is more emotional. But there's not really a structure to that approach. It's pretty chaotic.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because like I've noticed that I feel like not only is your sound relatively experimental. I mean, people want to pigeonhole Oceano in the Dethcore category, but I think that even with that category, there's so many different tricks and twists and directions. You could tell what if you played 30 seconds of a song, that's off of Incisions, or that's off of Ascendance, or that's off of Revelation. So it's fair to say that experimentation was never really an obstacle in Oceano, right? It almost seems like that was part of your songwriting.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. It wasn't like we came out the gate like we want to be an experimental band, but we were never afraid to try things. And even after the songs are finished in the studio, we've always really spent time tweaking songs, rewriting. I remember the past two albums, Scott literally had a bed in, basically, we stayed at the studio, but he had a bed like next to his setup, specifically so if he had an idea, he just would wake up or just roll over, and tweak something, or we just come in and be like, hey, let's change this around. So it's always been open. We've always been open to experimentation on the spot, which is a little bit improvisational, I guess, but I think it's more, we're just open-minded to change things. We're not afraid to just flip the script a little bit. And I think that's another testament to Scott. It's really cool to work with a composer and a guitarist who literally, if he finishes a full song, he can agree, and we come to an agreement like, hey, we need to change that whole half of that song. He's like, listen to it. All right, let's do it. There's not a lot of fighting when it comes to changing things if we both see eye to eye and we can do better. So we've never just been stuck in our ways when a song is finished. It's not done until it's literally turned into the label.
Fair enough. And every time I ask somebody, how do you know when a song is finished? And they say, when the record label approves it. I think that's always the funnest answer. So
Yeah.
yep. And this is sort of like a debate I like to have with artists, because when it comes to the evolution of your sound, is evolution really something that you can dictate? Do you have control over your own evolution, or does it just kind of have to like happen naturally in a way?
I think it's a mixture of both. A little bit natural. When you look back, you can kind of see it. It's almost an afterthought when you look back at the catalog. I've been doing that a lot lately. Um, I see it now, but if it would have been maybe 7 years ago, obviously there was a drastic change once we hit our Ascendance album. But now that I have that full scope, 5 albums deep, I still can see how it makes sense, even with the changes and things like that with the band. And the vocally especially too. I think it's a little bit of an unrealized evolution, and then at the point where we're at now, it was definitely the desire to show that we've evolved as musicians, and that allowed the album to, I think, take a couple steps above the last release.
Mhm. And as a vocalist, have you always needed to hear the music before you come up with lyrics, or has there ever been a time where maybe a lyrical idea or a concept maybe can help guide with how Scott would be with regards to the songwriting or something like that?
Yeah, he often, and he's doubted even more with the new album. He likes to hear the vocals. He likes to get feedback on what I think could be better, or adjust it to fit what I'm trying to do. I send him some demo ideas, and he'll go back into the song. And this album, there's a lot of that. I'm super stoked on it. Like there was probably on some songs 3 to 4 different exchanges of just not really even me changing anything, but him jumping back into it and kind of matching some things on his rhythm parts versus my patterns on the vocals and stuff. So he's really keen on that, and we've dialed that in this album. There's a lot of that where it was a kind of a give and take. Like I put some stuff down, he would take it, listen to the vocals, and then try and kind of perfect the song and make it wrap around my vocals more. So this album, this new album, that was a big formula of it. Was music composition came first, vocals came second, and then there was a whole nother session of restructuring the song.
Have you ever had like the best lyrics ever, but then they're always like one syllable over every arrangement that you have or something like that?
Yeah, thankfully I can rectify them generally quickly. In the past, especially though, sometimes you have that word, it's like, oh, they're like, this line is killer, but I gotta reel it in a little bit.
Has Oceano ever because I don't know what it is, maybe it's the way I look at the album artwork, or I just listen to but I feel like your music is almost like my analogy of Oceano is the thinking man's deathcore band. That's how I look at it. So
I love it.
Yeah, like if Aristotle discovered breakdowns. So
yeah, I totally love that. I've never heard that. Unconsciously, that's definitely been, as a lyricist, that's definitely been my goal. I put a lot of thought into it. I first forced all the members to understand and appreciate the fact that you guys go in on the instrumentation, I'm going in on the lyricism and the vocal side of it. So I totally agree with that. There's a lot of depth, no pun intended, to our music.
Well, see, the last time I saw Oceano was Summer Slaughter 2017, and while everybody was crowd killing during your set, I was watching you guys like this. In a good way too, because it has that thought-provoking sound. So would you consider anything from Depths to this new album to almost be a concept album in a way?
Yeah, there's always been, like I was saying earlier, like a motif or a concept, some a little heavier handed than others. So like Contagion was a very hard line. Linear, though the songs didn't play out into a linear story the way I originally intended, because sometimes you have to switch it's just the flow of the album sometimes just doesn't work. But it was intended to be, I wrote it as a linear concept, and then we just jumbled it all around. So the Contagion was definitely a full-on concept album. They all are in their own ways, but Contagion would be the most heaviest one. Once we got Incisions was more my first stab at being very transparently open to my inner thoughts and emotions at that time. And so that's kind of the theme of that one, which was just delving into a lot of pain, distress, and just things that were just going on, just without really airing too much of my laundry, you know. And then Ascendance was the start of, I guess, a vision where I figured it would probably take about 2 albums, maybe 3, to just set a new tone for the band, because I saw where we were headed. So I at least knew that we were going to have at least to take 2 albums to really set a new tone with the direction I was going with the lyrics, and also the style of the music, new elements we were bringing in. So the way I approached that was almost like it was a package kind of thing, where it wasn't a direct concept. It was more like, hey, I'm gonna kind of get you guys ready for where this band's gonna be, which was at Ascendance point. That's what I was preparing for, is right now, where it's like, all right, we're gonna take this another level with, you said, like the thinking man's deathcore. It's now fully visualized on this new album, where I was trying to take it, like anyone, if you're on the same wavelength as me, or you're hearing some of the stuff I'm talking about on Ascendance, by the time we get to 2-3 albums after that, we're going to be really deep in it, and that's kind of where I'm going to take it further and further from there.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I had the feeling that Contagion was more of a concept album, because I feel like a lot of your albums are very what I call shuffle friendly, where I could put on any Oceano song at any point and just really vibe out to it. Like I could just put on Ascendance, and I don't care what song it starts off with, I'm just in there. But with Contagion, I need to start off with Precursor to Enslavement and end with Ending Intellect, and that instrumental, Existing Confinement, I believe it's called, that instrumental that happens in between really adds to that narrative. And I think that is so I knew it was a concept album in that regard. But depending on what the material is about, whether it is more of an external source of inspiration or coming more from within, does it maybe resonate with you differently when you're singing it, or do you feel like you channel a different side of yourself depending on what the material is about?
Yeah, I think so. I've been diving into the lyrics and just my past writings and where I'm at now, and it's pretty cool. I never thought it would get to that point where, looking back at a lot of the songs, I wrote these songs when I was in, most of the albums were like at like mid to late 20s. So, I'm in my like closer to late 30s now. So looking at that stuff now, it's like there's almost like little like hidden gems that I left myself, my younger self, unknowingly, I feel, left these hidden gems for my older self to look back on and be like, whoa, that's where you were at back then. Or like, whoa, you actually were thinking about some deep stuff. Though I'm still growing, still learning, but okay, I wasn't as naive or as, like silly as I thought I was, with my direction of thought. I still resonate with a lot of things I've said. I don't resonate with certain things, but in the end, I feel it's come full circle where I can see a new message. It's like there's lots of the lyrics, I've been reading them. It's like there was one way I intended to write it when I wrote it, but looking back at it now, it's like I see it in a whole different light, and it's very connected because the way that I wrote the new album that's coming out, it was intended to be just strictly just open for interpretation, and looking back even already, we finished it like probably a year and a half ago, the writing process. But even now, even looking at that album, I'm like, I even see that as a whole different type of like perspective than what I was actually writing about in those sessions. So I think I guess, what was it, when the circle starts to get like, when you have that curve and it starts to get just closer and closer and closer between looping back around, I feel like for me creatively, that's when I'm really honing in on the true intention of my writing. So that's where we're at right now.
Do you think that when you play songs from different eras all in one set list, so like maybe you'll play like 2 Contagion songs, and then you'll play stuff off this new album, and then go back to Incisions, and then bring back a Depth song or something like that, do you feel like that maybe changes the narrative or changes the context, or even as people interpret your music more, do you feel like the meaning of each song or each album can grow and develop as more people experience it and as you bring it to the world more and more?
Yeah, I think that it's cool. I've always thought it was cool just on a musical level too, especially for our albums, because they do have these drastic different vibes. It's kind of cool to use that to change the vibe and the energy of the live set and what the crowd is experiencing, especially when like some of the older songs are hits for the old school fans. I'm noticing now that actually some of our newer songs actually are only the songs that some people know now. So it's cool because now we could cater to different eras of fans at the same time while decisively just picking how we want to set the vibe. And I very much enjoy the fact that we're not as if that's a word, riffy, as we used to on the past two albums. And so it's nice to throw that in because it starts to show the musicianship of everybody. Like Depths has a crap ton of blasting, and like our stuff, some of our newer stuff lately doesn't have as much, So it's cool to see different metal fans, different death metal fans react and how the crowd moves to different songs. And a cool thing that I'm really excited about, Scott is working on this right now. I think we just did it. We were doing it now, or it's going to be way more part of our set, is now we don't have to, we used to group things in order of guitar tunings to limit the guitar changes. Now we don't have to do that anymore. So that's going to bring a whole new element into our live set. Yeah, so that's going to make it even more exciting.
Is that because he invested in more pedals, or did he upgrade to like a 11 or 12 string guitar like many people in the genre are doing?
Yeah. I think it's one pedal, and just how he's running, because he runs out of a Kemper. So it's that setup, the way he's running the setup now. It's just making it where I think he was even saying, he was like, it was so weird playing Depth songs and older songs on like an 8-string guitar, but it was cool.
Yeah. At what point, like, I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that in a couple years, deathcore bands are going to start having to use a harp because of all the strings that they keep adding on.
Oh my, that would be interesting. Like a super down-tuned harp. That'd be wild.
Oh my God, I can't. Whoever's watching this, I hope whoever's watching this, any of your fans are inspired to do this. In order to get the inspiration to write vocal ideas, whether it's lyricism or think of like different vocal patterns, do you seek out the inspiration? Do you kind of go looking for it, or do you just kind of have to let it strike you?
Before, I would have an idea or a direction I want to take it, but I always do some research just to round myself off, whether it be, having a thesaurus for extra words that I, just to go deeper. It also helps me learn. It's always like writing is a learning process for me too. I'm always leaning into things that I'm interested in. So it's helping me become more versed as just, a knowledgeable person, but also rounding myself off where it's like I'm actually well versed enough to speak on the subject matter. For the newer stuff, let's talk let's call it like Ascendance, Revelation. Those are a little bit more of like a spiritual type of thing, where it connects a little bit of just general outlooks and beliefs, but it's also connected to a lot of just spiritual interpretations of things. And the new album does play on that as well, but the new album is a mixture of that and also just my, not so much worldview on a political sense, just my worldview, like what's going on, what frustrates me, what do I think we can change? That's always been, I think, infused in the albums, but it was always done in a more like sneaky way, like subliminally. This one's a little bit more in your face about it. And so I've always done research. This album is the one where I didn't necessarily need to do as much research as far as externally, but it was a lot of internal research, internal work and being comfortable to just express my feelings without being, scared of the backlash. It's just speaking freely, and if anyone's feelings get hurt, hey, fuck it, this is my expression, my truth, and my perception of what I see going on and what I would love to change, how we can change, how we could be better. And even some things is just like, I'm just straight sick of it. I'm just gonna scream about it.
In the end, it's your art, and therefore you're the artist, so your experience and your emotion and your interpretation is what's people are gonna end up experiencing. So one way or another, I think what you're doing is the right answer regardless. So
yeah, no holding back.
Yeah, but speaking of no holding back, because when I listen to the albums and I've seen you live, you most certainly are not holding back. But when you are in a studio and you have to go into that vocal booth, and the studio is a very static and very controlled environment, very confined in a way, and you're going all out when you are on stage. So how do you kind of capture that energy when you're in like that vocal booth in a way, and you're in that sort of studio setting?
That's a great question, and I've always tried to figure that out, and I believe that I've nailed it. I don't listen. It's evolved. It started as something that just I didn't know would work that well, and now I've made it my that's just my general way I do it now. I don't listen to the songs a lot. I just will maybe do one or two listens. I don't write anything down. I try not to overthink what I want to write about, and I just go. And that came from mostly because we were writing a lot of this new album on the tail end of, like, lockdown loosening up and everyone going back to normal life. And so it started from me just streaming, and Scott would just check in on my streams sometimes, say, hey, we hadn't seen each other in, months to years. We just were in different states and stuff. So we just check in. One day he just pops in, like, hey, by the way, check your email. I finished the song whenever. And I was like, can I listen to it now on stream? Like, it's probably going to change. And he was just really cool about it, which I know that can sometimes be a rough topic to cover, like letting people get a sneak peek of unfinished stuff. But he was just really chill about it. And it just, from there, I was just like, I can't just sit here, listen to this, and just let it go back in my email and I'm hearing so much inspiration in my head. I was like, I have to work on this right now. And he was just like, go ahead. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And so we got in this rhythm basically of him just showing me his ideas. And every time I'd get him, I was like, I'm inspired. I have to write to this right now. And from that, when we were getting close to finishing the album, it just evolved into, okay, when you got the next song for the album, just send it to me and I'll write on it right then and there in spot. No writing ahead, just whatever I feel based on what he felt, with the emotion that he put into the music, I wanted to play off that. And then so whatever that music made me feel, then I want to put that down on the song. And it was really cool because when we talked about it afterwards, I got to pick his brain about it. And he's just like, yeah, like this song, I was definitely feeling like that. And, this song was definitely feeling like that. I was like, okay, we got something here. I think we've dialed this in. So that's what I do now. It's just, I don't want to really hear it until it's time to record. I don't want to write anything down. I might maybe have at least some vocal patterns, but I don't want anything more than just hearing it like it's the first time, and I want the raw emotion, and I just want to put it down right then and there.
Well, whenever I ask an artist how the making of the album was, and they say, oh, we all collectively came together and it was all mutual agreements, I don't really believe that, because if you're in a band with 3 to 4 other people, or Slipknot, like 9, and you're making a dozen or so songs, you all have your own experiences, you all have your own inspirations, you all have your own emotions. There's going to be heads colliding, there's going to be disagreement, but do you think, like, maybe not being emotionally on the same page, because your music has a lot of contrast into it and a lot of experimentation, do you think that maybe it kind of works in a way if you guys are not really always on the same page, that maybe helps add that contrast in a way?
Oh yeah, I think so. And I think sometimes through the experimentation, there was times where there was pushback where I was like, I think maybe, I was like, maybe I should like reel it in a little bit. And then Scott would come back and he'd be like, no. I want it that intense. Like you can't. There was a couple of times where I was actually wanted to reel it in on some things and change some things. And he's like, no, the first takes, the first ideas were the best ones. He was like, I don't even care what you might think would be better than that, and if you could perform it better, he was really into just those raw and first emotion takes, and we did butt heads on that, where it's like, no, let me redo it again, and I would try, and every time he'd be like, nope, and I'd get so pissed off at him. It's like, motherfucker, like, and it's like, fine, and I'd finish like, fine. It's like he didn't really give me too much shit with this process in general. It's like, fine, I'll trust you on this one, you trust me on these ones, we'll meet in the middle. So it still worked out.
You and Scott need to make a sitcom.
Oh, dude, I bet we have a very interesting dynamic. He's
the Sumerian.
We always
sitcom.
joke about this. Yeah, he's a wild dude. I'm more reserved on average. He's not wild all the time, but when you get him in a good mood, good energy around a good positive group of people, he's the life of the party. I'm more reserved, but I can match his energy, and I always like jokes like, one day let's just both go wild, and I bet you I will party you under the table. He's like, and he's just like drinking his beer like, oh, yeah, right, buddy. I'm like, all right, one day I'll get him.
Oh, you heard it here. I hope Scott watches this. And I have 2 more questions for you, if that's cool. But,
yeah.
And that is going back to the live presence in a way. It's kind of like 2 questions in one with this. That is, do you channel a similar energy when like is it almost like a same creative energy playing live as you do when you are songwriting, and like your crowd interaction and your stage presence, is that really something you could practice or rehearse in a way, or do you just kind of have to like let the music take hold and kind of like let your energy speak for itself?
I've never been too aware of it until lately, and what I've noticed is it's almost like it's two different versions of me merging into one on stage, where it's like it's my purest it's my purest personality. That's more like the side of me that's the fan interactions, and I like to kind of subtly mess with the crowd and stuff, or see if they notice stuff I'm doing. I like to goof off in between a couple songs, in ways that's like it's just me. If I was grooving in my room, to a song I liked and no one was listening, that comes out on stage. But then there's the other side where it's like it's like a muscle memory vocal side, where I'm like I'm not really even thinking about the fact, I'm not reading the lines in my head. It's muscle memory on the lyrics and what I'm doing. And at the same time, it's so like out of my own body, where like that's why I need a set list, is because it's not that I don't remember our songs that are in order. It's just, I don't know how to explain it best, but it's just like I'm not really like there. It's probably, a lot of people will talk about how, like when they're, I think it's when they're like maybe like lucid dreaming, or when they're like astral projecting. I feel it's kind of like that, where it's like that's the one time that I experience the most, where it doesn't really feel like I'm fully in my body. I feel like there's a version of me that's kind of just watching down on me perform, and then the only part of me that is kind of like conscious is just that child, that inner child that just wants to have fun and like see how the people react and feed off that, and like poke with them, I can get them smiling and stuff, and see if they notice what I'm doing. So it's like it's a duality, but it's all positive. Like there was a time where I loved to just stir up some chaos and I get pissed, but I was never really pissed about anything particular. It's just sometimes you just want to fucking scream and let out a lot of energy.
You definitely do that, I must say.
Yeah.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is actually kind of like talking about like sort of like the modern day scene in a way, because I really feel like, and again, I don't like the whole pigeonholing thing, but just for lack of better words, the whole deathcore movement, like I feel like bands like you or Whitechapel or Suicide Silence in a way have now become staples in heavy metal, in the same way that like Cannibal Corpse or Morbid Angel is to death metal, or what Mayhem is to like black metal. And I feel like with the rise of new bands like Lorna Shore or Shadow of Intent, or a lot of bands in that sort of genre evolving, I really feel like the scene is in one of the best places that it's ever been. I mean, when Job for a Cowboy put out their comeback album, people reacted to it the same way as like when I guess Carcass put out their comeback album or something like that. Mm-hmm. So like, what is your take as a vocalist in the scene? What is your take on it? Because I could tell you that the show that we have coming up in Brooklyn Meadows that I cannot wait for, with Blood Thrown Within the Ruins, it's going to be a hell of a time. So I'm just wondering, what's your take on the modern day scene?
If I'm being completely honest, I've had maybe like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Almost like I'm doing like a split, where I've been very like just focused on a lot of other stuff as we were working on the album, and I'm still getting accustomed to what's going on. Where it's like, we did a good amount of shows in 2022, but then we took a full break in 2023, and a lot has changed even within that time. And I think I'm still digesting, and I think I have a feeling my eyes are going to be open even more to just like where the genre has come, how far it's come with this year. But I really am pretty like oblivious, honestly, to like, and I think that's better, because it keeps me, as I always want to be, very humble and just and just focused on the moment, and not over focused. Yeah. So I definitely recognize and can see that it's different, but most of that perspective has come from me asking a lot of the guys that have been active more than us in the last 2 years. But I think for me, it's like, it just feels like almost like when I started and when I first got into Oceano right now, where it's like, I don't really know what to expect, but I just can tell that there's a lot of good things going on. There's a lot of good things being said about the band. It seems like there's excitement around the band. And that's a good enough sign for me to keep going, because I wouldn't stop anyway. But if there was ever anything that's gotten into my brain that's made me feel like I need to stop, it's washed away, because I do feel there's a lot of positive things circling around Dethcore and the band. So I'm just optimistic and just stoked to see what happens. Like, we start our next shows next weekend, and so I really don't know what to expect, but I don't expect it to be bad.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of an experience, I can tell you that much. And we can't wait to have you back in New York. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time, and just most of all, thank you for all your music over the years. That has just been absolutely kick-ass. Is there just anything else with Oceano you'd like to promote? Like, when can we be expecting the new album, if you're allowed to say, of course, and what else is the future holds?
Cool. Yeah. Before that, I want to say, like, I appreciate it. Like, you're very well versed in Oceano, and so that's pretty tight. Yeah, it's nice to connect with people, because I'm a fan of music before anything else. So it's cool to just connect with people that pay attention to, as a music fan, what I'm doing for my band, because I try and do the things that, if it wasn't my band, that I would think would be cool. So, so that's tight. I would say to people watching this that are super fans of Oceano, these are the things I will say. So we're doing the 15 years of Depths shows. That starts next week and throughout April. In between some of those shows, we're going to be working on our first music video for the new album. And then after we're done with the Depths shows, we just announced shows unrelated to Depths moving into new album territory with Last 10 and Awaken Providence. By the time we start those shows, we should already have a new song out. And they're probably, by then, should be pretty much all the years that people have been waiting for, like, when's the new album? I think right about then, we'll have a lot of news ready for everybody, and it'll just be plopped on your lap. So I think by the time we get done with Depths, it's going to be a pretty quick jump. Like, think you're jumping into a portal into the past, and then you're going to jump through another portal, and it's just going to take you right back into the present or the future. So it's going to be really quick. Like, celebrate Depths, and then boom, what's Oceano doing for the future?
Yeah. You're going to tell me all this stuff when I turn the camera off, just so you know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Totally.
Everybody, we are here with Adam Warren of Oceano. Be sure to check out their new single, Mass Produced. New stuff coming very soon. Catch them on the Depths 15-year anniversary tour. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.
Peace.
That was the perfect interview. I don't have to crop out anything in this. Thank you. This is